Hey guys, I hope community group is off to a great start. This is the first of several videos we're going to do in this series, uh, the gospel, which is good news for everyone. And what we're going to do each week is gather in these groups, and as you hopefully have already done, you'll come together, you'll kind of check in. Of course, tonight, hopefully, you're getting to know a little bit about one another. But each week following, as you gather, you're going to kind of check in with each other, see how things are going, see maybe where God's been at work in your life over the last week. You're going to kind of check in on how things went since you met before, because hopefully at the end of each of these sessions, you're going to kind of take some next steps or make some promises to yourself about perhaps how you might faithfully follow Jesus this week. And so there'll be some check-in each week. And so we'll kind of start with that. And then toward the middle of our time together, we'll look at the scripture. We'll sort of look back at what we talked about on Sunday. And through that, hopefully, we'll not simply dig deeper into the scripture, but we'll find ways to apply what we've learned on Sunday. And so this Sunday, the very first kickoff Sunday, we talked about how the gospel really is good news for everyone. And we looked at a passage from Romans, the very first chapter. The first part of it, Paul kind of introduces himself and begins to create some common ground with the Gentile audience. And then we looked specifically at two verses, Romans chapter 1, verse 16 and 17. And I'm going to read those again for you, just kind of refresh your memory. And in that, Paul said, he says, I am not ashamed of this good news, gospel, about Christ. It is the power of God at work, saving everyone who believes, the Jew first and also the Gentile. This good news tells us how God makes us right in his sight. This is accomplished from start to finish by faith. As the scriptures say, it is through faith that a righteous person has life. And so what I want you guys to kind of, I guess, work through tonight is the things that Paul says here. Specifically, he says the gospel, the good news, he's not ashamed of it because it has power. Paul's seen that power at work. And so one of the things that we talked about on Sunday was that the gospel is power. It has power, the power to transform, the power to redeem, the power to not only transform and redeem your life, but everyone around you. So the second thing we highlighted Sunday was that the gospel redeems or rights what was wrong. The gospel doesn't simply look at what is broken, toss it in the trash, and do or build something new, which is kind of our tendency in our culture. But rather, the gospel takes what is broken, puts it back together, and redeems it. In other words, makes something good out of that which was broken. And so for our own lives, this is important for us to realize that whatever is broken, whatever mistake you made, whatever mistake I've made, whatever mistake has happened that perhaps was our fault or wasn't our fault, that God can take even that and rescue it, redeem it, and make it like new. And then finally, one of the things we talked about is the gospel is not earned, but rather it's received. That all of this is God's gift to us without cost. And so the gospel is received by faith. Paul said there toward the end of that passage we just read that this is accomplished from start to finish by faith. As the scriptures say, it is through faith that a righteous person has life. The only way we're to receive this redemptive work of God in our life is to accept it, to receive it. We can't earn it, we can't buy it, but we have to allow God to do that work in us. I'm reminded as Paul opened up this letter, I am a slave of Jesus Christ. Paul said, I am living in full surrender. And so to receive this incredible gift of the gospel, we do so by faith, in full and whole submission and surrender to Jesus. What I hope that you do over the next few minutes in your group is to talk about these things, to kind of look deeper at this scripture. I've given you guys another scripture in 1 Corinthians to kind of look at and to see maybe another angle at which Paul talks about this good news, this gospel. what I want you to do in your group is to talk through, what does this look like in my life? How do I receive it? How do I give it away? How do I experience the fullness of the gospel? How do I experience its power? How do I allow it to redeem and restore my life? And how is it that I can walk day by day by faith that I might receive all that God has for me? There's some very specific questions in the guide. I hope that you'll spend some time with that, and I hope that you'll take some brave and courageous next steps as you look for ways for God to continue to shape and mold you in your journey ahead. So as you wrap up too, I want to remind you of one thing. Toward the end of your time together, you have in the study, or in the one of the things I want to remind you of is toward the end of your facilitator's guide, there's some instructions in there to pray for one another and to encourage one another. As you make these next steps, as you declare for yourself, hey, this is the challenge for me, and this is kind of how I'm going to move forward in this. I really hope that you'll take some serious time together before you head home, that you would really pray for one another, that you would spend some time in your group, literally, verbally, praying for one another. I believe that as we do life together, that when we do that, we are not simply hanging out and sharing a meal, although I like that a lot. I think the time that we spend encouraging one another and building one another up through prayer, I believe that that will change the outcome of what God does. And not just praying for one another in your group, but throughout the week, that you continue to lift them up. I believe God's going to do a great work in your group and in our church as you continue to walk in this way.